Welcome to the ICE North America Lottery panel. My name is David Isaacson. I'm the Vice President of Spectrum Gaming Capital based in New York City. Here to talk about lottery today, we have Gordon Medenica from the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Commission, Lauren Walker, who's the Director of Interactive Content and Customer Service of the Kentucky Lottery, and Ludovico Calvi, the President of Global Lottery Monitoring Systems, a global lottery consultant. So our topic today discusses iLottery, and as the lottery continues to evolve and pursue modernization, iLottery, many states view iLottery as a potential game changer. Thus far, just to set the stage, iLottery is offered in Michigan, in Kentucky, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Georgia. In some states, such as Pennsylvania, iLottery is somewhat at odds with the gaming industry. The gaming industry views iLottery as a threat to iGaming. It's a very complementary product. However, in light of this recent COVID-19 pandemic, there's an increasing momentum for digital products, and iLottery seemingly is as important as ever. So just to kick things off, I want to go to all three panelists to kind of explain the iLottery, the difference between iLottery for instant games and for draw games. Kind of set the stage as to what the controversy is around iLottery. So why don't we start with you, Gordon? Gordon's from Maryland.
Good morning, David, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel. As you know, the lottery industry has been trying to go online for more than decades, going back to when I was in New York and we got the Justice Department to reinterpret the Wire Act in our favor. However, the opposition to online lotteries continues, and it's primarily political opposition. It's certainly not a technical issue. And lotteries have been fighting for years to be able to sell their products online. And the biggest resistance to that actually comes from our retail partners. And of course, retail is very important to lottery, and there's nothing that we want to do to alienate our retailers. So it's been a bit of a balancing act for us. Obviously, history has from Europe has been for decades very positive that iLottery does not hurt bricks and mortar sales. Now we have some examples in the U.S. That demonstrate the same. But there's a very important distinction, as you raised, between what is semantically referred to as iLottery versus what might be called iGaming that relates more to casino products. And the experience in the U.S. has been that if you just sell your lottery tickets online, Mega Millions, Powerball, and you're in the same game essentially as the bricks and mortar tickets, that those sales are relatively modest. And I think the places where that has taken place could be less than 1% of revenue. Where you start to get into a little bit of a controversial area is in what are referred to as e-instants. In other words, instant tickets online that can play on and on. And it is that ongoing play that makes it closer to a slot machine experience in a casino. And the distinguishing factor seems to occur at the payout levels. And as you know, typical draw games in the lottery industry pay out at about 50%. Typical instant tickets, the paper variety, pay out anywhere from 60 to 80%. But what lotteries have found that online with e-instants, you almost need to push that payout closer to casino typical payout levels, perhaps 90%. And it is at that point that I think the controversy erupts, and where perhaps legal structures haven't quite caught up to the dynamics of the game, and certainly nobody's focused on this issue of payout. And the issue in Pennsylvania is that iLottery, which was launched before the iGaming products, has put out e-instants, much like Michigan, that have that kind of high payout level. And even the operators of those games at lotteries, they use casino-style metrics, such as time on machine. This notion that somebody wants to get on the machine, it's a casino metric that you use in slot machines, where you don't want someone to lose all their money right away. You want them to have an enjoyable experience, be able to play for some amount of time. And that is now becoming part of what iLottery is finding to be the successful formula. So those jurisdictions that have had success with internet-based products like Michigan and like Pennsylvania that generate maybe double-digit percentages of their revenue have done so through the e-instance in a high payout product that has caused some agita, certainly in Pennsylvania, where the casinos, I believe, are suing the lottery. Obviously, we don't have that issue in Maryland because our agency runs both, and we try to coordinate our efforts.
Thank you, Gordon. Lauren, let's go to you. You know, you run the interactive program at the Kentucky Lottery. Can you kind of walk us through how you started iLottery and, you know, kind of the successes and challenges thus far, what you've learned? Obviously, Kentucky is not a casino state, so probably a little bit of a different dynamic than what you're seeing in a state like Pennsylvania.
It is a very different experience than in Pennsylvania. You know, when we launched our online program, we launched it with the same payouts that we had at retail. And that was a very conscious decision in order to make people more comfortable with what we were offering. It helped our retail partners, it helped our legislatures. And it was a lot of work with our retail partners, getting them comfortable with how we were going to do it, helping talk through their concerns, making sure we were not going to in any way hinder their sales, and then kind of proving ourselves. It was a definite slow, steady, continuous effort in kind of moving them through that change process and getting them comfortable with our product. Since we've launched, we've continued to see our retail sales grow, so that's been a very successful thing for us. We've been evolving our prize payout, to Gordon's point, trying to address those player needs, balancing between, you know, where the lottery and our players were comfortable with, and then also trying to address that changing experience of what it's like to be online. And that's a very different experience, and it takes some learning. So we've been trying to make that evolution slowly for our players, for our retailers, and kind of keep people comfortable with where we're going. But we've been seeing great growth year over year. We're expecting that to continue in the future, and we're excited for what this is.
Thank you, Lauren. Now let's go to Ludovico. Ludo, you know, I know you're in the business of consulting to lotteries globally. Can you talk about some of the things you're seeing, themes relating to initiating iLottery, some of the either hesitancies that lotteries have as far as it relates to getting into this business, or other challenges you're seeing and other themes with lotteries that you work with?
Thank you, you know, for having me on this panel, and thank you, ICE North America. I tend to agree with Gordon and Lauren. Of course, there has been a resistance by the retail network since they've seen digital and iLottery in general as a threat. Lottery has been a cash-based business for decades. It's very difficult to change this overnight. So what COVID-19 is doing is that while cash is dangerous because it spreads the virus, and many governments are actually taking actions for that, and the World Health Organization is even recommending government to give incentive to cashless transactions. Well, you know, what we have seen even before COVID-19 is that lotteries have started offering non-lottery, or strictly speaking, lottery products. So they've started launching sports wagering, they've started launching iCasinos. And of course, the cross-fertilization has been extremely important for the very reason Lauren was mentioning, that the consumer habit is changing. We need to, of course, look after the existing lottery customers, but also the new generation. And I think that some lotteries in Europe, but also in the US, also thanks to sports wagering, they've started to begin to think of an omni-channel plan So the issue is also organizational. Lotteries normally have had the head of retail, and that's it. We need to change the process, and COVID-19 is changing organizational processes very quickly. You have a head of retail and a head of online, and now you have possibly a head of product and marketing, which is omni-channel. You cannot have two different P&L with two different individuals being responsible for one or the other, while the main goal is to actually generate excitement and selling the dream. We also always been a community, David. The lotteries have always had the sense of community. And during this period, we are experiencing unprecedented times. I think the sense of community will come up stronger. And social interaction, it's actually much solid and easier to control via digital channels. So we have seen retail resistance as a challenge. We have seen, of course, the issue with the cash. So the need to go to payment, to digital payments, and therefore having just responsible gaming provisions, which could allow through digital channels to offer much more guarantees and safeguarding measures than obviously cash-based business. So I can see that the lotteries will actually, following this COVID-19, see an acceleration of the digital transformation, which basically will bring this device to be the terminal. And whether you are playing inside a physical location and continue to do that outside on your device, well, this is what's going to happen.
Thank you, Ludo. You brought up some interesting topics that we wanted to get into. Most notably, at this time, the effort to modernize the lottery. I did a comparison for a study that I did comparing the lottery growth over the last 15 years and comparing it to casino gaming. And what we found is that lottery has grown at double the compounded annual growth rate that casino gaming has grown to. Suggesting that lottery has been successful in modernizing. I think one of the key factors was in the instant ticket sales. Moving away from just draw games, which was probably 30, 40 years ago was the only product, and moving towards instant tickets. Now you have this another push to modernize the lottery through iLottery Instants. Let's talk a little bit about demographics. Who's the lottery player now? And who does the lottery want to attract via all these digital products and innovations? Gordon, why don't we kick back to you? You're in Maryland. Tell us a little bit about that demographic.
Absolutely. It is one of the myths of the lottery industry that somehow we are segmented in a certain demographic slice. And this is going back to when I was director in New York as well. And we, of course, do a lot of market research. And what we have found every time we've measured is that the demographics of lottery players are almost exactly the same as the demographics of the state that you're in. And it makes sense when you think about it, because something like 75% of the population plays the lottery. So whether you slice that by age or gender, occupation, education, ethnicity, whatever you want, it's amazing how the percentages of lottery playership look exactly like the percentages of the jurisdiction itself. And that's an important point to make, because there is a lot of the controversy or the myth out there that lottery players are low-income players. They're not. They are just you and me. They're everybody. In fact, for years, we thought lottery perhaps had a hole in young person playership. And I remember in New York when we converted our market research technology from calling people on the telephone to doing it online. And all of a sudden, we discovered that we had young players. And it was just the methodology of the research method that kept us from finding them in the first place. Probably we have a little bit of a hole in playership for very high income people. So I don't think that's really a target for us. I can't see lottery going there. But I think there are very few products that have the mainstream appeal. And this relates to how we advertise and how we market, because we're not targeting players because it is such a mass appeal product. So our marketing pitches have to be designed for that broad base of playership that we see. Now, there are some interesting little dynamics within the various game profiles. For example, the big national games, Powerball, Mega Millions, which even though they are very visible and people almost associate lottery with those big national games, in larger jurisdictions, certainly in Maryland, those games represent only about 10% of our sales. So even though they're highly visible and recognizable by the public, they're not necessarily where the whole action is for us. So we've seen for example, in our instant tickets, we're doing some segmenting there. There are extended play players. There are people who just scratch the barcode to see if they've won. They don't even care about scratching the ticket. So there are the little sub-segments of playership that we're finding that we can appeal to because we have so many products. We're launching probably 50 instant tickets at price points from $1 to $30. Texas has a $50 ticket. So a big factor in the growth of instant ticket had to do with pushing those price points forward. And that was much tougher to do on the draw game side. The biggest effort there was when Powerball and Mega Millions went from $1 to $2. And a lot of the growth there was related to the price points. So we continue to see various segments that can appeal to us. And obviously digital is just the way the entire universe is moving. So we need to keep up with our consumers in that regard.
So just a follow-up, Gordon. When is Maryland going to be coming fully online?
Well, I think sports betting is going to be the camel's nose under the tent for us. The legislature did pass a sports betting bill this session, even though the session was truncated because of the health crisis. It'll go to referendum in November. Most of the polls that I've seen indicate strong levels of support. And what was fascinating there is we presented a plan that we thought made sense and suggested it to the legislature, how they should structure sports betting. And we thought mobile would be a big point of controversy. And it turned out to not. Everyone accepted mobile. So when sports betting comes along in Maryland, it'll definitely have a mobile component. And I think once people get comfortable doing sports betting on mobile, adding lottery should be relatively easy. Now, in Maryland, iLottery was specifically banned only 3 years ago. So we actually went in the wrong direction 3 years ago, and that was due to a push and some misinformation that came out of NACS and some of our retailers. So we think now the consumer demand and the fact that politicians are much more comfortable with people playing games on their mobile devices will help us finally get over that barrier.
Got it. Lauren, let's go to you here. I want to talk a little bit about Kentucky and also highlight Michigan. Michigan is to date the most successful and also the most tenured iLottery in the country. In 2019, Michigan generated $116 million of net revenue from iLottery instant games. So can you talk about what's going on in Michigan? And as it relates to Kentucky, what are some best practices that you pursue in order to grow this business and be successful? And then secondarily, if you could just comment on what your demographic looks like in the Kentucky iLottery as it relates to the retail lottery in Kentucky.
Yeah. So yeah, Michigan is who everyone wants to be when they grow up, right? At least in the iLottery world. So a huge shout out to them and their team because they do great work. And a special shout out to Shannon from me because she puts up with all my questions that I come and badger her with. So she's been a great teacher and mentor that way. Michigan is in a little bit of a different spot than Kentucky. They have casinos that they were actively competing with. They were able to go out with a different prize payout strategy from the launch. And I think that definitely helped with player growth and acceptance. But they also have a really strong team looking at changes, transformation, tracking. How do I keep pushing to get the most data to be able to act on those players? And so those are some of the same things that Kentucky is looking at too. Where are we attracting new players? Why are they staying? Why are they not staying? What can we do differently about our program to make it better to address those needs? Demographics, and this is something we've kind of chatted about with Michigan, we have seen the same thing with our online players. Everybody expected it to be lower, went younger when we started. We find all players want to play online. There's reasons for, the 65 plus to want to play online, whether it's accessibility, whether it's not having to go to the store, whether it's they're just very comfortable because they've been, FaceTiming with their grandchildren. We find that we have a lot of growth in that 40 age range online. Convenience, ease, applicability is really important to them. And then we also see some of our 18 to 25-year-olds, they like a different style of game. They're kind of going for a little more of a leisure game compared to a traditional lottery game. Or maybe they enjoy playing at lower price points. What we're believing is that if we can just get them playing, get them used to the platform, get lottery being relevant to them, we'll continue to grow them as customers as time continues to go on. So you're looking at each segment of the population for a different reason. They all contribute differently to the bottom line, and it's trying to make sure it makes sense.
Thank you. Ludo, let's go to you here. Just a different question. You brought up the COVID-19 pandemic. In my home state in New Jersey, we're seeing substantial month-over-month increases for people that are playing internet gaming or gambling on internet gaming sites because the casinos are obviously closed. Michigan reported some very impressive numbers on the iLottery side since the COVID-19 pandemic. So, kind of walk us through what this pandemic means for iLottery, for digital products. I mean, you can even talk about sports betting here going forward. I would imagine that states will first tackle, reopening the casinos and obviously keeping jobs, retaining jobs, and getting people back to work. But looking at this 6 to 12 months from now, what are the implications for digital gaming in general?
Well, this is COVID-19 will accelerate the process, David, definitely, the digital transformation, not only in the lottery business. I've supported the Oregon State Lottery to launch sports wagering last year, the whole of last year. We launched the end of October. November, we start generating revenues, and this was the first digital product. So going back to what Gordon was saying, sports wagering could be an incredible, a tremendous innovation vehicle for all lotteries. And again, lotteries worldwide, whether that's in Europe or the US, are looking at increasing the gaming verticals to make sure that there is cross-fertilization because the demographics is changing. Buying a lottery ticket is not being exciting. You always sold the dream of winning a jackpot, but the challenge we're facing here is knowing your customer. Lottery hardly know their customer, as in the winner of a jackpot because you are going to run background checks. What we need today is not a one solution fits all. We want customized solution, and KYC, effective KYC, is important. So knowing again who you are, who is your customer, and whether that's a one-to-one actually a sale of iLottery or even customized games, this is where we are going to see the industry going. And again, mobile lottery, I think, is something which can help profiling customer effectively, whether you're using it for sports wagering, iLottery, iInstance, but this could be used inside the location or outside. Sports wagering has been suffering, as you can imagine, with the absence of sports events worldwide. So we have seen, and we forecast something like between -60%, -70%, given that the Olympic Games are not going to take place. There are other major events which are not going to take place this year. And we have seen a rise of virtual betting and esports. Even though on the virtual betting side, we have seen lotteries which already been offering this product, while esports in general has been something new. But what we also seen is an increase into ghost matches and match fixing cases, because criminal organizations have seen the window of opportunities and have started organizing frauds. And as the Global Lottery Monitoring System Sports Integrity Association, we have never been so busy in the last 2 months. So what I see is that in the future, David, gaming organizations which have a healthy profit and loss account will win. They will even have the opportunity to buy, potential small businesses. We need to do more, organize more our processes internally, and be a much change the culture the lottery actually use to run the organization. Take risks, be more courageous, and also obviously be data driven rather than doing the things we've always been doing for decades. This is important because this is what the customer are looking for.
Thank you. So just to pivot a little bit to sports wagering, I've thought for some time since PASPA was repealed that the retail lottery outlets in every state would be the perfect place to set up kiosks and have sports wagering, because sports wagering is a different activity than casino gaming. Casino gaming, you spend 2 or 3 hours at the tables, you have drinks. It's a much more social experience, whereas most of the wagers on sports is, you place your bet on that night's game, and then you go home and watch the game, and that's it. I always thought that putting sports betting at retail lottery locations would be really, really successful and much more accessible to the population. So let's just get into why that hasn't happened, or it has only happened on a limited basis. Ludo, you seem like you want to jump right into that topic, so why don't we start with you there?
Well, I mean, very quick one. I mean, I've been in the sports betting industry for 28 years. The last 20, my main occupation has been turning lotteries into sportsbook, whether that's US, Europe, Asia, and so on. So we need to actually get on an omni-channel. We need to think that our channel is not only and necessarily the main retail one. We need to look at devices which can actually create the conditions. Before COVID, of course, the small convenience stores was an opportunity with a screen to put the customer in, using their mobile again to bet, not necessarily a self-service device, but watch the game, or even create that positive approach where you could actually get the retailers involved to open accounts, and the digital bettors can actually collect winnings at the retail location, while the lotteries are paying a commission to the retailer for that. So we need to create the conditions for which retailers are involved, because otherwise they will see that as a threat. But if I look at the customer journey, I think sports drives passions. And, it's not selling a dream. You are following your team. You go home or you're watching the game and you are playing in play. So that creates really the conditions for which you are on a very sticky customer experience, which will keep you on, whether you are on a physical or a digital location. And this is where, again, sports wagering can innovate the lottery, the way we approach customers, the way we serve them, and the way we actually communicate to them effectively.
Lauren, could you see a situation where Kentucky doesn't have casinos, so if Kentucky were to pursue sports betting, that it be run through the lottery? Is that something that you could see happening there?
We are willing to do whatever our legislature would like us to do.
Okay. Gordon, do you have any comment about the prospect of sports betting in Maryland? I know in Washington, D.C., you'll have mobile sports betting, as well as sports betting at F&B locations and stadiums, which is kind of an interesting model. Maryland is obviously more spread out, so why not give it to the lottery?
Well, it's interesting, and to Ludo's point about the appeal of that huge base of lottery retailers as a omni-channel approach to sports betting. But I really think that mobile leapfrogs that perspective. And again, it's great to have 4,600 Maryland lottery retailers involved in it. But if you can have the entire 6 million population of the state be able to do it on mobile, then I think it kind of leapfrogs that. Now, we think that lottery can play a role. Obviously, everyone is aware of the good success that Delaware's had for years with parlay betting. So to some extent, we think that the difference will be on things like bet types. For example, in-game betting is becoming very popular, and that is almost definitionally a mobile product. So to the extent that that becomes where people want to spend their time, that will define it. And, we've seen the experience in your state of New Jersey that something like 80% of the sports betting is occurring on mobile. So I think mobile will, in a sense, preempt. And I think retailers should not view that as threatening to them at all, because you've got to remember, the reason why sports betting has become legal in the United States is because we recognize there's so much activity occurring in the illegal market. So this isn't about taking market share away from retailers and their customers. It's about taking market share away from the illegal sports bettors. So to some extent, anything we can do with our lottery retailers will probably be additive, even if it's somewhat limited, for example, to parlay betting.
Okay, so that about wraps up our time here. Should be a very interesting next couple of months, certainly the next year for all digital gaming as we get through this COVID-19 pandemic and come out of it hopefully stronger and with more iGaming, more sports betting, more iLottery, and more business for all. Thank you to our panelists.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Di.
Thank you all. Have a great day.